Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be working on this E36. It is a 316i manual, so something that isn't very common. We're going to be doing an oil and filter change, and we're also going to be checking out the brakes. The pedal starts quite low, so I'm guessing it's either it needs a brake bleeding. Hopefully it doesn't need a new master cylinder, because that is a possibility, but I don't think it would. Maybe we'll solve it with just a simple brake bleeding. A very clean car, and these are great chassis for engine swaps, but this owner will be keeping it original and stock. We're also going to be starting off with the K24 AC Cobra. Initially, we planned on placing the engine in the front. So we were going to make it a front wheel drive car, a little bit raised to clear the bonnet. But we finally managed to come to a great solution of using Mercedes parts that we have lying around the workshop and combining it to make a nice chassis. We're going to be basically putting together parts from around the place. We have the differential out of a 124 Mercedes, an E220. We have an E220 gearbox. We have a full Honda Accord. So they're great engines. People love to swap K24s into different things. We're going to be building a K24 Cobra. We're also going to be using whatever we have lying around for now, later on looking at the aesthetics. But first of all, we'll be building that, and that's what we're going to be building for the next few months. Earlier last month, we were working on the Mosh, which is basically a modified Morris. So I'll be showing you guys that car in a bit, but for now we'll be working on this. So right now we're changing the oil filter. What we're going to do is we're just going to put this one in. We had to source this from Bombay, but I think it was available here. They're quite universal. We've got this tool to tighten the oil filter cap. So this works like this. It's basically a chain. And yeah, basically as you tighten it like this, it'll tighten it. So that's what you can do. You can also do it this way, but that's how it's supposed to work. So we'll be placing this cap back over and doing that. We're using fully synthetic Castrol oil. No, Castrol is not sponsoring us. Hopefully they do. But yeah, fully synthetic 5W40 for this car. So after the oil filter change, we noticed that the car wasn't idling. It was acting funny, misfiring a bit. And we realized that we also changed the air filter. We actually just cleaned it up. But while doing that, we had to lift this. And there's a little breather pipe over here. And that had dislodged. So what was happening is it was getting the wrong air signals. So we put that back, and now the car idles perfectly. So apart from the E36, we are also starting on the Cobra build. We're using this Honda Accord. It's got a K24 engine, which is a 2.4 liter VTEC engine. It has probably around 140 horsepower, not sure, haven't checked it out. It's an early one, it's also a manual. That would have been great for a front wheel drive swap, maybe into almost any light hatchback. It would have been great. But in this case, we're going to be pairing it with a Mercedes gearbox and differential. So that's something we're going to be doing over time. Right now, we're going to be stripping the interiors and getting to the wiring, because we want to retain the original wiring, the cluster and all that. So we're going to take out everything, label it and remove it. Yeah. We changed the oil and put in a new filter, but now we have to bleed the brakes. But we found something peculiar that might be interesting. Basically, the bolts, one of the bolts on all of the wheels has this high security bit. So we have to use this. This is found in the trunk of the car, and we have to put this on top, and then it matches the bolt size of the rest of the bolts. We also have this, which is the locator pin, and this helps us place the wheel back after servicing it. And it's easy as that. So now we're back in the E36. We've serviced the car, we've done the oil change and the brakes. The oil cap, the oil filter cap just was a bit too stubborn. So maybe next time it needs to be oiled. That's what we did. We oiled up the seal and put it back in. It was dry, and maybe that's why it just wouldn't come out. So a 15-minute job ended up taking half a day. And that's something that we encounter in a lot of classic cars. You might think that, oh, we're going to finish this whole car in half a day. No chance. It's going to take far more time. We end up spending sometimes 3-4 times more time. Sometimes something breaks, then we're going to have to source it. We might not find a simple part locally, and then we have to get it from Bombay. So that's why things actually do take a lot of time. But that's that. It's part of working on these cars. Apart from that, this car is super clean. I'm really glad that I got to drive something like this, and it's a great example. It's a survivor, because I think that these survivors have to be maintained and kept stock and original. Meanwhile, there are rougher cars that are maybe half as good as this, and they should be modified. Honestly, I think every BMW that is old and automatic should be engine swapped. It's not a popular opinion, but I think that's how it should be. You should be able to have fun with it. That's what the chassis is all about. It's nice, it's light, it handles really well, and it's a great car. The other thing that I noticed is this car does have a few flaws, but it's something that you could fix. And in today's market, if I were a buyer for one of these, which I'm not, I think I would pay something like, 5 to 7 lakhs. I think that's what the value of a beautiful car like this is. With up-to-date papers and all that, I think 5 to 7 lakhs is what it should be worth. Meanwhile, you're getting 124s. People are quoting crazy money for subpar cars that need work. Like pre-facelifts seem to have a lot of work these days. They're not mint condition. And E220s, they're Indian cars. They've been made here. They're so popular. They're all over the place. Maybe it's great for when you want to source parts, but I think that you shouldn't be paying so much money for them. It's not something that a lot of owners will admit, because it'll depreciate the value of their own cars. But honestly, I don't care. I think it's wrong to be pushing prices further and further. Okay, maybe your car has something special, maybe it's a special model, okay, it deserves a premium. But based on us constantly moving prices up and pushing them forward, I think that's completely unfair. But I think something like a 124, I would pay less than something as clean as this, because you're getting something that behaves completely differently. It's fun, it's interesting. A BMW is all about the driver. Like this whole cluster, as I said, is facing you. It's all looking at you. But a 124, a Mercedes, it's all about the passenger comfort. It's about comfort. In spite of that, we have really rough roads here, and this car handles quite well. It's not too bad. It does a great job with all the bumps, and it's smooth, it's great. What more can you ask for? This car is in great nick. There's no suspension noises or anything. So I think that's a great factor for us to judge what this car should be like. And it eats up the bumps. It's not like a Mercedes would be softer. It would be more smooth. And for me, I'm like a huge Mercedes, BMW fan, sometimes the VW. I do like Jap cars, but I really enjoy these classic young timer Mercs and BMWs. I really enjoy them. It's just something about them. They feel well built, they're beautiful, they have great designs. Like even though I'm not a fan of when they shifted the design to the seal beams and stuff, I still really appreciate this. It's a beautiful car. There are a lot of quirky bits and things that make this car different. Like different from that you should note. For example, you have a lot of control over the AC. Like a modern car, you can vent it differently from left to right. You have the heat control, you have a lot of other stuff like that. I haven't been able to test the sound system because it is coded. It's coded to the car and it's reset. But another interesting thing, this whole thing of how quirky a lot of these things are. So the interesting thing about this car is it has these peculiar mirrors. I don't know the story, I don't know if they were an option, I don't know if they were aftermarket, but they resemble M3 heated mirrors if I remember correctly, and they look completely different. They've got this sort of vented side, vented style, and they are completely controllable through this knob over here. So that's something that's really cool, and they're working, they're fully functional. This is a car from 1994. It's as old as me. No, little younger. Yeah. little younger. But yeah, it works completely fine. All these little things. The sunroof works. That's great. It doesn't jam up. It's been serviced regularly, so it works great. I think whoever had has this car or had it before or whatever took real good care of it. So I think that's great. And there are a lot of little quirky things here too. We have this inverse fuel meter that I was talking about. The engine in particular on this car is really healthy. So I noticed that a lot of older BMWs, they haven't been taken care of mechanically, especially the engines. Sometimes you have a lot of them with blown head gaskets. And I faced that issue where my car had a blown head. And I tried to get it fixed, but the guys who built the engine the first time, they didn't clean the passages. So the car overheated again after a year, and I was back to this problem. But this one has a rock solid temperature gauge. It's right in the middle. This is where a BMW temperature gauge on an E30, E36, whatever it is, whatever young timer BMW you have, it should sit right there in the center. It can move a little bit to the side. When you turn on the AC, it should move a little back because you have another fan kicking in or whatever. But it stays rock solid. That's how this car should be. And that's how a car like this should be maintained. I can't really brag about that. I use my cars quite rough, but this is how a car should be. On the other hand, you have stuff like different types of engines for the E36. That's something I could tell you about. In my E30, I had something called the M40B16. So an M40B16 means the engine series is called an M40. It's a 4-cylinder which started with the E30, fuel injected, or only fuel injected, and later on they made them twin cam, but they did have single cam and twin cam options. Twin cams having more power. The one in the E30 that was twin cam was a 318IS, so it was a sports model, and I think it was a lot in the US. But those were really light. They were powerful, I think 20-30% more power than the single cam, and they had to detune them because they were too close in power to the heavier 6 cylinders. So then that kind of didn't make sense. It would ruin the sales of the 6 cylinders. So they had to detune it. In this case, this is called an M43, if I remember correctly, M43B16. The second number after the number after the B denotes the CC. So this is a what would you say? It is a 1600cc engine. A little rough, but still handles well. It's a 1600cc engine, and these engines go up to I believe somewhere around 1900, not too sure. But this one here is a single cam, and it's a manual, so that's great. So this car came in various engines apart from this one itself. It came with a 1.6, it came with a 1.8, it came with a TDS, it came with a 2.5 liter diesel engine. It also came with 2 liter 6 cylinders. Those are quite common. They are around here and there. They came with 2.5 liters, 2.3 liters, 2.8 liters as well in the facelift. And they also came with the M engines. So in the US, what they did was, because the cost of building it with the M engine was too much, they built a US spec M engine. And they basically they kept the block and everything else the same, but they updated other parts of the engine. So that made it more powerful, yet they were able to cut the cost because they didn't have to import the engine, they didn't have to have all that going on. So they were able to cut the cost substantially. I think with all that being said, this is like a really nice car to have, and a great option if you are looking for a young timer. A 316i, 318i, not too bad as a daily driver. It doesn't consume that much. It's been driving all right. It's comfortable. It's got a great AC, which I've shut off because it's a little noisy. So now we're going to drop this car off and we're going to work on another car. We're going to pick up another few. Hopefully they don't give us too much trouble. We're not sure what we're looking into. One's an Ambassador. The oil filter is leaking. Hopefully it's just a ruptured filter, but I think we're going to have to take it home and look at it. Otherwise, there is some threading that might be gone. We'll look into it when we get there. The other one is our CLS. That one is having a battery drainage issue. With the newer cars, I'm not too familiar. I hope I can figure it out at some time and get more comfortable. But I always outsource these more tricky parts, you know, like the electronics and things like that. The cars which are more prone to those problems. So the newer cars I try not to work on, but the young timers I'm completely comfortable with. After dropping off the E36, we went to pick up this Ambassador. This Ambassador here has an Isuzu engine. So it's got a modern 1.8 liter Isuzu engine. It's fuel injected. But what happened was basically the AC compressor dislodged and fell onto the oil filter. So the oil was just spewing everywhere and leaking. What we have to do is we have to take out the oil filter. We couldn't do it on the spot and it was quite stubborn. So we tried some of these tools. We have something like this. This is a chain. We tried that, it kept slipping. We went for this. Basically, it's a tool that tightens this way. This didn't work either. So our last resort is hammering a hole through the oil filter and twisting it open. So now we can open it up and we can change the oil, we can change the filter and fix the AC compressor mount. We had this Ambassador for a few days, and basically what happened was the AC compressor had broken off of its mounts and fallen onto the oil filter. It then started leaking out and we had oil everywhere. It wouldn't hold oil. So what we did was we brought this back home. We had to take off the full front end to get the radiator off and pull out the AC compressor and get to the bolts of the AC compressor to check if we could extract them. It turns out that we couldn't extract the AC compressor bolts without pulling the engine out. So what we did was we just put a smaller belt and kept the power steering running, and this car will go back to Delhi where it will be worked on, because this is actually still valid. It may look like a 60 or a 80s Ambassador to you. Some people even roll back these 2000 model ones because they're still valid in Delhi. That's the great thing about this. This is under 15 years old and it's still petrol. So that's great. So basically our problem with this Ambassador engine is it's great, it has plenty of power, it does a good job. But because of how tight this engine bay is, it was really hard to work on the car. We would have had to take out the intake manifold or this water canister. Actually, the intake manifold would have had to come out. This wouldn't suffice to get the AC compressor out. But yeah, that's why instead we took out the front end. It ended up being a 2-day job for something that on another, let's say a German car, would take half a day. So it was quite inconvenient, but otherwise quite interesting to see one of these and drive them. It has a lot of modern touches to make it usable today. It's got an AC compressor, it's got power steering, power brakes, it also has power windows, and it's got a lot of interesting features there. So it's great that way. I'll show you guys the inside. So over here we have the power locks. You can hear them, they all work and they work with a snap. We have the power. One sec, we'll have to turn on the car. A little slow, but yeah, they work too. So we have power windows as well. We've got a great AC in this. Currently it's not working, and it's quite smooth. The car is really smooth. When you drive it, it's really comfortable. So that's a nice thing about this. It feels like a modern car. They modernized the dash. That's something I don't like. Maybe if they kept the old dash, it would have been quirky and nice. But they wanted to give it a modern touch for today, to give it a newer look. So these are the last of the 1.8 Isuzu powered Ambassadors. So now that we're done with this Ambassador, I don't think we take it out for a drive and show it to you guys. Maybe next time when it's working completely. I'll show you guys this. This is basically the Honda Accord with the K24 engine. So So this has a 2.4 liter Honda engine with a VTEC, and what we plan to do is we plan to take this engine out and pair it to a Mercedes gearbox, differential from a Mercedes as well, and make it rear wheel drive for our AC Cobra build. This is for a friend of mine who wanted to retain the engine and do a build. So we want to make sure that we have the wiring intact and completely fine. What we're doing is we're stripping the interiors and putting out all the wiring. It took us a lot of trouble to get the dashboard off. We actually had to cut stuff off because that wouldn't work. So the owner, Vaibhav, and some of his people who work for him, he's got a place called Maker's Asylum where they're into making stuff, electronics projects, woodworking, stuff like that. But a lot of the guys are really handy over there, the guys who help out, and they helped us take apart this car. So we're going to keep doing this till we get the engine out with the wiring. We're probably going to put it on the lift next and make sure that we can see how the suspension works. Currently the plan is to reuse the front suspension of the Honda with the wheels, with the hubs, with the steering rack, and reuse Mercedes parts for the rear, make a mating plate for this engine to a Mercedes gearbox, and make everything work. It probably won't have an AC anymore because we won't have a roof, so that won't be needed, but we'll be doing this. So we want to make sure that we take out every single wire with its connector and label everything. I couldn't find any connectors in the engine bay for disconnecting the engine wiring from the engine and separating the two, but instead we're going to go to whatever's on the other side of the firewall, disconnect that and separate it. So now we're in the Honda Accord. As you can see, there's no dashboard. It is beeping away. One sec. We've got all the wires, all the connectors. As you can see over here, we've got wires that meet the fuse box from the firewall. We'll be disconnecting all of that, labeling everything to make sure that we have everything intact, and trying to make it as easy as possible. We did remove the airbags and airbag module. The car still starts, so that's the good news over here. We'll retain the cluster and things like that, and probably have to fix the power steering. I think the rack is bad. So luckily the car starts. It is showing us things like errors like the doors are open, so we'll probably have to trick it to make it think that the doors are closed. The fuel gauge works, temperature gauge works. We're gonna have to probably reuse the fuel tank, and yeah, all good. Just to check engine light, we'll have to see that later. Yeah. So here's the Honda Accord with the 2.4 liter VTEC engine. I think it's quite interesting, and it's a great donor car for a lot of power. You could get this has a manual gearbox. You could get them between 50,000 to about 1.5 lakh for something that gives you, I think, around 140 horsepower. So that's great. It's a great donor. People used to use Crowns and what do you call them, GS 300s for the 1JZ and 2JZ engines, but right now they've gotten too expensive. So this is a great alternative for a front wheel drive swap, or you could even convert it to a rear wheel drive. I know guys in India who've put them into E30s as well, so that's quite easy and it's quite good, and there's a lot of support for them. So we're going to be working on this for the next few weeks. We're going to take out the engine, we're going to take out everything clean without cutting any connectors, making sure everything's labeled so we don't have any problems in the future, and we're going to be building this using this engine to build the AC Cobra. Next time I'll be showing you guys this project we were working on. So this is something interesting. It's very raw. It's a very raw project that we finished in about a month, and didn't spend much on it, but it's just a quick project. But I'll show you guys the whole car next time. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you guys next time.